No, do you know what show we're talking about? This deaf poetry jam. You can tell the story of this, because I think it is kind of amazing. No?
You know the story.
I'll do the story. I actually really know. I'm going to make this really quick, but I'm going to make it more detailed than any other interview we've ever done about this. In the year 2000, Danny Simmons, who happens to be Russell Simmons' brother, he's a visual artist as well, had a relationship with the poetry scene in New York. He was a visual artist, and he also had a relationship with the poetry scene in New York. And he was trying really hard to get his brother Russell Simmons, who was the executive producer of our show, to get him to invest into the poetry scene. They started off with a pilot at a bar called Twirl, where the host wasn't Mos Def, the host was Mums the Schemer, and everyone got up on the stage and brought bands and music, and they finally got Russell Simmons to come inside and see it. After that, I guess meetings were happening, and they had different ideas and different visions, and all of a sudden there was a rumor going around that they were auditioning poets for a pilot series called Deaf Poetry. And they had a West Coast search, they had an East Coast search, and they had an intermediate search, which was trying to get as many poets from the poetry scene involved. And yeah, through different slots, people weren't well known, so they got on board, and other people were being auditioned, so they were being filmed, and all these tapes ended up, and we were being filtered, and we ended up in the first season, right? Did all of us end up in the first season?
Yes.
And they shot this pilot, and it was during the week of 9/11, right? Yes, it was during the week of 9/11, during the month or the week of 9/11 that we were supposed to shoot this, and it obviously didn't work, so we had to shoot it later. And we shot it later, and we were part of the pilot season. The pilot season did well. Immediately after the pilot season, we were offered a second season, and during the second season there was a vision to put it on Broadway. Russell Simmons wanted to put the show on Broadway, Stan Lathan wanted to put the show on Broadway, so they went and found poets according to their taste. Not the best poets, although we consider ourselves that. Poets according to their taste. And they developed what I like to call the Little Rock Nine. We paid our dues, and we ended up developing a workshop of the Broadway show in San Francisco, and then from San Francisco we took it to Broadway, and then from Broadway we took it to the world. Won a Tony Award for the show.
Good explanation.
Is that all right?
Yeah, it's pretty good. Gold star.
Collard greens and cornbread.
Yeah. But this is also a bit strange. I mean, you talk about poetry. Normally, when we talk about poetry, we talk about somebody's writing a book, and the book is published, and it's sold in a couple of hundred copies, and then maybe you get awards for it, and then you sell a couple of hundred copies more. And this is, poetry in another sense. I mean, there's also, it's easy to criticize from the poetry scene. Like in the newspaper today, there was saying like it was poetry without poetry, whatever that is. That's that could be with poem also. And I think what it was aiming at is the entertainment level of it. And this is kind of added, right? And you're talking about theater a lot. But are you two also as engaged in theater as Lemonists, and thinking about the differences and likeness of theater, or are you, consider yourself poets in the poet scene as this? And how do you see yourself in this criticism also?
I understand, right? That's definitely criticism that's been going on in the United States for a long time.
Yeah.
In academic circles, there's a tendency to criticize what we do based on what is perceived as a lack of craft. But a lot of that lack of craft that they want to impose upon us comes from the traditions that they were raised in what poetry is, So for ourselves, I do consider myself a poet, but I don't consider myself one who adheres to things like, like how John Ashbery would use images of that New York school. And I wouldn't see myself even as a beat, even though they come from an oral tradition as well, right? I think that what we're trying to do as a part of the culture and the times of the United States is poetry because we reflect a lack of expression in the country, because the society has become so complex and so enormous. There hasn't been room for individuals to express human things, human connection. And so just because, you know, we're not in the Paris Review or the Atlantic Monthly, you know, it doesn't mean that we don't have a profound effect on people with the distillation of words that we use or the way we present ourselves on stage. You know, for myself, and I'm sorry for being long-winded poetry, but for myself,
I'm learning.
Regardless how you feel about the craft of my work, I won't debate something that's subjective, because each one of us in this room comes from a different experience and a different tradition, right? If you were raised reading Bukowski, you might have a very different feel than someone who was raised reading T.S. Eliot, John Keats, things like that. And for me, just my face, whether I attack that or defend it, is part of the poetry. My face, my English, my experience, that combination is part of the distillation for myself. So I do consider the theater a very valid part of this, because if poetry is to only linger in language and not express tone, not express movement, not express a musicality, then it's not evolving. So yes, we are not like those who came before, but it is 2011. You know, the world has changed.
I agree with everything Beau said. I think that we are, and I'm hesitant to use this word because I don't want it to be braggadocious or bragging or anything, but I think we live in we definitely live in a YouTube generation. And I think we're just, like you call it Little Rock 9 or whatever, I think we're kind of more of a YouTube style of poetry, where when I was growing up, it was all books and reading poetry out of books and everything. But now I've learned, since my videos from Def Poetry Jam and all the stuff have been on YouTube, I am recognized more from my YouTube videos than I am for anything. And I'm also an actor in America. I'm also an actor on television and a couple movies. But people come up to me every day in America and like, "Oh, I saw you on YouTube," and I'm like, "Wow, on YouTube?" And if this was back in the day, it would be, "Oh, I read your book. You know, I read you read your poems in the book." But now people are noticing me from YouTube. So I think that.
But not television so much. I mean, it was an HBO television also. That then was broadcasted on YouTube, no?
Yeah, we probably got more viewers from YouTube. You know what happens is that, and I know this for sure, is that, you know, the syndication of what YouTube does to the HBO shows is bigger than the TV series.
Because it's more accessible. You can watch it, go right now and go to YouTube and watch it.
And it also is attached to your, title, it's attached to your subject. So if someone types in money, all of a sudden, all things about money come up, and there's a poem about money written by poetry. So, but you couldn't do that necessarily watching a TV show.
Yeah, but there's also one thing lacking in that you have to either be lucky searching for the subject, or searching for the poet. But in the TV series, you're actually introduced to things you didn't know. Because I mean.
That's the pros and cons. The pros and cons and vice versa, because you could get lucky and then really get lucky by running into the poems. Like you can by mistake run into it, and the one thing that I will say about the way YouTube does things, especially for the poets, is that it really brings you up a lot. I mean, YouTube for some reason does something with spoken word that it just always pops up. It just pops up those spoken word videos for everyone, you know. I don't even know how to explain how, like, I get all these views. It's not because people are looking for me. It just so happens that the subject is attached. Like, for instance, if you put lemon, you know what a lemon is. Next thing you know, there's a poet behind the word, you know. And it's like, oh, poet. And then the poem comes. And then all of a sudden, it starts to do this, which
And from that poem, they look at another poem.
They look at another poem. They look at another poem.
Let's
So
see what else
when it comes to
he's done.
spoken word, for some reason, YouTube really does a lot more as far as showing the world the staging of poetry than actually what Barnes and Nobles or B. Dalton does for the reading of it.